So, as we look back at 2025, this year saw the release of a number of really good headphones that we loved. It's got us thinking whether this has been one of the best years of headphones ever or one of the best years in recent memory. So, I brought the gang with me here today, and we're going to talk about how 2025 stacks up as just one of the better years in headphone releases relative to headphones that have come before. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about the direction that we want to see headphones go in the future. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the question is 2025 actually the best year in headphones? How do we all feel about this?
Well, I think the main one we've got to compare it against has got to be 2016, right? That had some pretty strong contenders coming out. There was the Sennheiser HD800S, there was the Focal Utopia, or LCD4.
Yeah, the LCD4 came out in 2015 at the end of it, but I think people didn't get a chance to actually hear that until 2016, so I would still say that it counts.
So I think 2016's got to be a bit of a landmark year. The biggest contrast in 2025, and the reason why I think many of us are so excited about it, is because it's not just the crazy flagship stuff that's all coming out, it's just solid, good, reasonably priced, attractive options for more people rather than just the 5-6K headphones. There's been a lot of good stuff both in the wired and wireless category, and it's leaving 2025 looking pretty damn promising.
It's interesting. It's kind of like also a bit of a statement on the trajectory or the trend for this space, right? The world of headphones. Because I feel like in 2016, it was almost like manufacturers were like testing the boundaries for like where they could position their headphones in the market. And now it's kind of almost like, it's as you say, it's like we're seeing these new releases that are great at all kinds of different price points. I don't want to say it's a reaction to that, but it's just a very different way for a year to be good in headphones.
It's just nice that there's normal tuned stuff coming out. I think in previous years, even if there were a lot of good options, so many of them were tuned quite strongly to a house sound or just going for something a little bit out of the ordinary so that they are more memorable and special, and you put them on and you go, oh, it's got some impressive party trick. Now, with 2025 and some of the models, which we'll discuss in a second, so many of them just being, or trying to be, just plain old good headphones without any weird stuff going on is very refreshing.
Yeah, and what's great about getting all of these normal headphones is it indicates that there is a buyer that has increasingly over time become more and more literate when it comes to evaluative methods that include measurements. I do think that's a lot of why this push towards normal sounding headphone responses and releases has come about, and it's been nice that a few of those releases have actually sold really well too.
Yeah, I think the other thing we might want to, the elephant in the room to address is that there's been a little challenge with the global financial situations, particularly happening in the US with some tariffs. But I think overall, as the year has kind of gone by, we've still gotten really great headphones at a really, at some very affordable prices that we'll talk about in this video.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of those headphones now, the headphones that came out in 2025. I'll list off the ones that come to my mind, and you guys let me know if there's anything that I miss. But to me, at least, the big releases were headphones like the Sennheiser HD505 and 550, the Head Audio D1, there's the Sennheiser HDB 630, there's the Audio-Technica ADX 7000, which was a flagship, but also it was, I think, a little bit more well-received by people who don't traditionally appreciate the more esoteric flagship kind of sound. If you think about the IM landscape, there were some products that were kind of pushing the envelope there, also in the more budget space, like the Truth Ear Pure. And we also got the Daybreak, which those two IEMs are probably the best value in IEMs right now at their respective price points. Is there anything else that I missed? Are there any other releases worth? Oh yeah, there's the Hi-Fi Man ones.
Yeah, the Edition XV in particular, I think, is really worth noting, because that's an example of one where, again, it's a more normal tuning coming from a manufacturer that, whilst Hi-Fi Man stuff isn't exactly esoteric in its tuning, it's just usually a little bit bright, and this one isn't. It's going for a more normal tuning, and that's, again, refreshing to see, and at a really nice price. It's nice that we can talk about some of this stuff so excitedly, be able to recommend it because they're just doing a good job, and they're not priced absurdly. That's the bit that makes me happy, is, there's some expensive stuff which is fun, but the good stuff that's cheap, or affordable at least, is more exciting to me.
I think the other thing that we might want to touch on is the fact that wireless ANC or quote-unquote gamer headphones have become pretty good, and they're still pretty affordable, right? I know I haven't really listened to too many myself, but I know, Andrew, you've been grinding away at reviewing them. So I'm sure you can appreciate a few of the good ones that we'll go through in this discussion as well.
Yeah, I mean, the big one that stands out for me there is the Cloud 3S wireless S, I forget. That was another example of like, hey, this is just a really sensible, normal tuning. And I would also extend that to just the category of wireless products generally. This is something that I've spent a lot of time evaluating, over the years, and it's been like a minefield of just there's no sense of whether or not something's going to be good based on anything to do with brand, price, any of the stories that they tell in their marketing. It's just like sometimes they're good and sometimes they're absolute dog shit, and the consumer had no way of knowing. And it's felt like the bar has been raised by some of the products that have come out this year, like the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2, like the HDB 630, and then also definitely in the gaming sphere with products like the Cloud 3 Wireless S. It's almost like everybody is winning as a result of even now the consumer tunings moving into a direction that is moving to a sound signature that is so much more defensible and reasonable.
Yeah, and I think I think you just made a statement there that I think really summarizes why I think we all feel this year has been a great year, and that is everybody is winning. I can't think of a scenario where a product came out and we were all worse off for it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I, in particular, and I may be alone in this, feel like this is a win, is because the headphone market year by year isn't one where I've seen a consistent gradient of improvement. And there have been entire years where I just don't see anything very good come out. But this year, like, the Edition XV became my daily driver. And the Head D1 was kind of in contention for that spot as well because of how well it was designed and how easy it is to just throw it on. So coming from, being in the hobby for a while and most years, frankly, being a disappointment, to getting a ton of good releases in 1 year was pretty unexpected.
This is a question for you guys. I don't know how I feel about this yet either, but I keep seeing the sentiment online in various places that the more people focus on measurements, the more people use measurements, the more things kind of homogenize in terms of their sound characteristic. And I think what we're talking about here, there's a chance that could speak a little bit to that. The idea that we're celebrating headphones coming out that sound more normal, where maybe people think that normal is not what they want. They want the vividness. They want the fireworks show. And I guess what I'd ask you guys is what would you sort of say to somebody who kind of feels the opposite, that like, why do we want things to sound normal?
I think it's because they're quite frankly, a lot of the time in the past, there just hasn't been many good normal sounding headphones, or the ones that, do broadly get it right have strong limitations which explain why people might not like them. I mean, HD 600 series, for example, there's a lot to love about that headphone, and it does do a lot really well, but then it has kind of no bass. It does roll off very early and quite significantly, which will mean that a lot of people won't enjoy it. And so I think a lot of people in the past have tried quote-unquote normal sounding headphones, which again might do a lot of stuff well but have limitations, and go, oh well, I just don't like that. When actually, now that we've got a lot of not no compromise but far less compromising headphones coming out, again at reasonable prices, it's worth going and checking some of these ones because they are genuinely excellent, and I don't think a lot of people realize how much more enjoyable they are.
Yeah, I think part of it is not, to your point about it being measurements, I would say it's less about the fact that there are, we do a lot more measurements now and that we have people using measurements as the baseline, and more the fact that I think this space has become a lot more, I hate to say this word, but a lot more influencer driven, right? And I think part of that is why it seems as if there's this move towards, oh yeah, it's got to measure good in order to sound good. I think it's actually a bit of a reverse, where measurements are being used as a supplement to people with regular ears who typically perceive products that are good to be products that are normal sounding, right? And I think the other way to think about it is, when you think about a review, I think there's sort of this dichotomy that you gotta wrestle with, at least for me as a reviewer. Is part of it is, if I'm gonna recommend something, how do I want to recommend it? Do I want to recommend it in a way that it reaches the broadest audience? Because the stuff that sounds the most normal is typically the stuff that the most people will enjoy, right? So there's kind of this challenge between, if I'm gonna recommend something, I have to make sure that, it can't be too esoteric that there's going to be a lot of caveats, and then somebody's going to come back and be like, well, why'd you recommend it? I hated it. But at the same time, to your point about people wanting something fun and energetic, there's also this part of me that's like, yeah, I want to like something that I personally really enjoy, And yeah, it's kind of that balance I think that we kind of have to try to deal with. And I think that's part of the reason why the space has sort of leaned towards more of that normalcy side of things, which fair enough is good headphones, right?
I do think that what you say, Andrew, initially is something that is more emblematic of how it typically goes in the IEM space, where a certain type of measured performance gets fixated on and then regurgitated ad nauseum. But I also think, kind of to what Cameron was saying, these products coming out, these more normal sounding products, does not in any way diminish the existence of all of the not normal sounding products. Like, you know, a few normal sounding products coming out does not change the fact that the vast majority of products do not fit that characterization. So for those people who want something that, you know, isn't as quote unquote normal, you still have plenty of options. It's just now the people like me who want something normal have options.
To more directly address Andrew's question, like, even though a huge, probably majority of people buying headphones are not looking at measurements, the more enthusiast category of people are also the ones that are still, for many cases, driving the purchase decisions of other people. Because, you know, if someone says, hey, I want to spend $400 on a headphone, what should I get? It's going to be the people that are spending more time looking at measurements, involved in the community and stuff, that are recommending products or pushing people away from products that are bad. And so no matter which way you look at it, and this is especially true in the IEM space, as more people use measurements and judge products based on what the objective data shows, it creates a significant financial incentive for companies to make products that fit things well. And so that is just going to push more manufacturers to making products that are more normally tuned. It does also mean that, yeah, more products are going to sound more similar, but I think that that's a good thing. I do like my esoteric things sometimes, but I would say that I would much rather have the majority of products on the market being good to varying degrees, rather than an absolute scattershot of just complete randomness where maybe you can find something that kind of fits for you, but you just have to guess for the most part. It's been challenging in previous years, and it's getting a lot easier. There are a lot more good options to pick from.
I wanted to note, though, for me, I think there's a little bit of a misconception that may exist in some of these community spaces about the idea of normal being boring, or like, people hear that, they might think, oh, I don't want my headphones to sound normal. I want them to sound special, right? A super fancy, expensive headphone, say they spend $1,000 on a nice headphone, it should feel special, right? But my point here is that normal is special, especially if we're thinking about iterative improvement on normal. It can be special in ways that I think maybe people are just starting to realize. The more of these products they actually get to hear that are genuinely great, the more that realization starts to, I think, dawn on people. And that's why, to me, it's like this year of 2025, it's like it's putting that stamp of special on normal.
Yeah, just to be clear, normal does not mean average. It means like reasonably tuned. I mean, hell, just to take an extreme example, the Sennheiser HE1, which is a phenomenally expensive headphone, and one that is, for all sorts of reasons, generally highly regarded. That is a pretty normal tuned headphone. That's part of why for a long time it had a really good reputation, because it wasn't doing weird, crazy stuff and trying to impress you. It just was doing a good job at sounding right. And now a lot more headphones at far lower prices are also doing that, which is great.
Okay, so if you could take a headphone from any of these previous years, like a headphone from 2016, where some of these crazy flagships were released, and compare it to headphones that came out this past year, would you take any of those over a headphone that came out in 2025? And which one would that be?
I still really like the Susvara OG. For me, that's one which still I use a hell of a lot. And it just, but again, because it's a relatively normally tuned headphone, it's not doing all sorts of crazy stuff. It certainly has some colorations to it. It's got a fairly big 2K dip, though that's something that I like, and it is a little bit brighter than most, but it's for the most part just well tuned. And I would take that over something like an Edition XV. But it's not like it's far away. I think that's the thing. I would be not super unhappy about having to swap it out for an Edition XV or an HE600.
Yeah, I think gun to my head, I would take an LCD4 over the Edition XV, like sonically, just because that richness of bass and tactility is so fun. But I think if I'm choosing like a headphone to live with, like it's gonna be the XV every time, because it's way more comfortable and way more normal sounding. Even though 2016 may have like had a higher high in terms of some of the quote unquote technicalities implementations, I do think this has kind of been a year of specifically very livable headphones, and the Edition XV is a really good example of that I would take over most headphones if I only had to choose one headphone, regardless of year.
I'm not gonna limit myself to just one. I'm gonna say if I had to pick a headphone for any of the previous years versus this year, off the top of my head, I feel like it would probably be the Focal Utopia would be the one I would still take towards. I don't know, I find those Focal headphones, especially the older ones, do something really unique, really interesting dynamically. But what makes this year interesting is that when you look at this year in particular, there's a lot of headphones in here that I would say, if I couldn't take a Utopia type headphone, the next best thing would be something from this year, be it the HE600, be it the D1, be it the Edition XV. Personally, even the R50X, like if I wanted a $200 headphone and I couldn't pick something more expensive from the previous years, I don't know, I might lean in towards the R50X or the Techno R50X.
I would actually choose the D1 over any of those headphones from previous years that I also enjoyed. And that's in large part because it ticks all the boxes for me as far as the mechanical design and the comfort. And then for the sound quality, it does all those things that imagine that the D1 got released in 2016 or something like that, right? You could have priced that up there. You could have put that up there with many of those other, crazy expensive headphones, and it would have done just as well, I think. It would have been deserving of praise.
I agree with that, especially because the D1 has that kind of driver story thing going for it that was a lot more prevalent and sellable back then than I think it is now. I absolutely think if it was released in 2016, they could have priced it higher.
And as a regular EQ enthusiast, the D1 takes great to EQ. It's something where if I do want to give it a bass boost or something like that, I can do that very easily. So for me, yeah, I probably would take the D1. It's funny as well. I think the things that I've looked for and valued over the years, or the past 10 years, have also changed, right? Where these days I celebrate things like the mechanical design more. I value those things more because they matter so much more to my personal enjoyment of a product. Whereas maybe in the past it was more getting the wow effect from the fireworks show, from the vividness that came out from these more specialized tunings in headphones like the LCD4.
I want to pick up on something actually you just said there, and that is, as an EQ enthusiast, right? Almost every product that was good that was released this year are good EQ platforms, right? And I think that's one of the things that make this year especially memorable, was that, pick any of the good headphones that came out and you could say, yeah, I could take that, one or two little notches here, it'll sound great, right?
Add a bass shelf, be happy, right?
Yeah, add a bass shelf, turn down the treble a little, do what you gotta do, and it's pretty easy versus I think in previous years where you got a hell of a peak here, a hell of a peak there, and you're trying to sine sweep it out and you don't even know what's happening, right? And and you sort of see this. And I think to the point where it's a growing pains, everything's sort of coming together. We see that coalesce with a product like the HDB 630, where now we have PEQ, a very powerful, pretty good PEQ built into the app, right? And then we see Moondrop also trying to do the same thing. And this sort of lines up with the level of sophistication that I think a lot of customers or a lot of enthusiasts in the hobby have kind of developed because of where this hobby has evolved. So yeah, I think part of why 2025 has been a good year is simply because a lot of these little pieces have been sort of been building together, I guess, in the background, and it's all coming to a head. So it's pretty exciting.
Well, I think that leads us quite nicely into a possible question about where do you think things are going to go in the future? Because for me, the most exciting thing is actually not even so much in the wired headphone space, but in the wireless headphone space, seeing headphones put EQ and the DSP that they already have inside them to much better use. I mean, we saw this earlier to good effect with stuff like the Maxwell, but this year with things like the Sennheiser HDB 630, it's quite clear that wireless headphones in particular are getting very good, and I can't see any reason why they're not just going to get better.
Touching on where I think products may go in the future, and frankly where I'm hoping they go, kind of playing off what Resolve was saying earlier about neutral not being boring. I feel like we've been living in a world without vanilla ice cream for a very long time, and now we're getting things that are kind of close to vanilla ice cream. But what people miss is that there are a lot of different types of vanilla ice cream. I feel like people have this idea that there's only one kind of neutral, and once we've hit that, it's basically over. But there are a ton of ways to tune what I would call neutral, or frankly what I would just call good. So I'm hoping what happens in the future, 2026 and onward, is that people kind of get that memo and we see things, maybe like a different version of the Hi-Fi Man Edition XV with maybe a little bit more upper mid-range. So, something still reasonable, but, a different flavor of reasonable. Or maybe something like the Head D1 with maybe a little bit less treble or more bass or something. So again, still reasonable, just a slightly different flavor of reasonable. Or, brand new products that take the lessons these, good headphones have and, do their own sort of spin on that thing.
I think wireless headphones is, to Cameron's point, is really kind of the next frontier, right? With all the technologies that could be implemented, and not just DSP, but I think in the recent video that you did, Andrew, with the Bose QC Ultra Gen 2 with that, internal microphone adjusting the ear thing. I used to think those are kind of gimmicks, but it sounds like they've really nailed it. But I think the other thing, if you're talking about just regular wired headphones, is, mechanical design of a lot more headphones could be improved, right? Like I think as we nail down, that sort of normal tuning like everybody's been talking about, we also improve the different options for mechanical designs and different variety for good mechanical designs that fit on more people's heads. So we've seen a lot of these technologies evolve. What about, do you guys think we would ever reach the real next stage, which is individual HRTF measurements?
I think that if anyone does it, it's going to be Apple that gets it right with the, not just the budget they've got for R&D, but the Face ID scanning stuff.
Or Bose. They're already doing a portion of that.
A portion, but I think if you want to do it properly, you need the scanning aspect of it to some degree. And I honestly don't know how far off that is. But if anyone is going to do it, as much as I'm not an Apple fan, I think it is probably going to be Apple.
The companies that are going to be doing this kind of thing are the Apples, the Boses of the world, like the ones that have these massive research divisions and have the ability to implement this kind of stuff. But I still think it's quite a ways out.
Yeah, it's just a shame that we're not going to see that really advanced active technology likely come to an open back headphone anytime soon. But I guess I'll keep my fingers crossed.
So we had some fantastic releases. We had the Head D1, we had the Sennheiser HDP 630, we had the Hi-Fi Man Edition XV, and the HD 600 for those that prefer Hi-Fi Man's more normal tuning. I like that one quite a lot as well. The fact that not only there are so many good releases, but so many good releases that people can actually afford is just something that makes me happy. And I think I speak on behalf of the team when I say that that's the case for them as well.
Do we feel collectively that 2025 is the best year in headphones, or?
I would say so.
Yeah, I would say so. At least definitely the most memorable one where everything sort of came together for sure.
Yeah, even in trying to moderate my recency bias, I kind of can't argue against it being the best year in headphones, because the headphone I decide to use and own over any other headphone I could possibly have available to me, which is basically all of them, came out this year. So yeah, 2025, pretty damn good.
But even if you don't like normal tunings, or you're just not sure what you prefer, you can consider making a purchase at headphones.com, because then if you get something and it turns out, actually, this ain't for me, you can just send it back thanks to headphones.com's 365-day return policy. They've also got fantastic customer service from people who are actually into this stuff and can help guide you to the right purchase, and it helps support everything that we do on this channel. So if you like this kind of content, again, consider making your next purchase at headphones.com. If you think that we're wrong and you want to tell us why, or if you just wanted to ask any questions about anything we said in this video or any of our other content, come and say hey on the headphones.com forum or the headphones.com Discord server, where we and other Wiggly Air enthusiasts will endeavor to help. Until next time, I'm Golden Sound, that was Resolve, Listener, Caleb. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.